All right. Welcome, everybody, back to Ropeadope TV, Friday afternoon in summertime, or almost summertime. It's about 95 degrees in sunny Philadelphia, and I am here at the Ropeadope room. We are back in regular rotation with Ropeadope TV. If you haven't checked the first week, we did some discussion with people in the industry. Last week was NFT Oasis. And we will have more people with industry talk. And then the second week, we get to sit down with artists and talk about music that's coming out, play some tunes. And today, we're going to take a little trip out to Los Angeles, California, which is probably colder than here, and visit with the great Greg Spero. This cat has been cranking out music since the pandemic began. It's like you started the Energizer Bunny as soon as COVID hit, and it just go, go, go. And I want to get to the bottom of it. I want to know how he does so much, and we're going to talk about the intersection of business and art while we're at it. Mr. Greg Spero, welcome.
I sort of resent that. I don't think it's possible that it's colder here in LA than it is in Philly. How hot is it there?
93, 94.
Oh my God. All right, I stand corrected. It's 68 degrees here.
Well, you are next to
Philly,
the ocean.
Philly dropped the mic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's a Philly thing. I think I was just corrected. Yeah. I'll take it. So how are you, man? You've been busy. Thank you for taking the time. We came in with a little bit of a song that you released today called "Wanting," and we're going to play the full thing, the full song during this show. But why don't we start there and work our way backwards? Tell us about "Wanting."
Oh man. So "Wanting," this goes with sort of how a lot of things in my life develop. There was a session that happened for a reason that I'm not going to tell you the reason that the session happened, but I invite people to try to explore and discover, because the clues are out there of what the session originally was. But there was a session that happened and we did improvisations. It was with me and Sput, Mano Neon, and Ronald Bruner and Russell and Sirota, and Chesley Cheese was on it too. And we decided we wanted to use the improvisations. We got 25 improvisations out of that session, and we wanted to use them in one way or another. And I'm going to be totally forthright and honest about every aspect of this, because some of these might be valuable to some listeners out there. When you're wondering, like, how the hell do I actually do these things? Like, put out a bunch of music. And so we had these 25 tunes. They were very raw. They were just these little improvisations that we had done. And I had all these ideas of, like, man, I can chop them up. I can mix them like the Chicago scene does, like Micaiah does, chop out some of the beats, loop them, and make these full-on compositions out of them. And I still plan to do that. But what I realized was, if I do that, I'm never going to get it out. So I decided a step one would be, let's just release it to the world and see what they think. So I had my graphic designer, Spencer Porter, rock star graphic designer. He's been a godsend to everything we do at Tiny Records. So I had him make a cover, and I mixed the audio. No, I take that back. Randy Amata mixed it. I did a little bit of mastering afterwards. But just a little bit, just a little tiny little tweak here and there, and like squeezed in the edges of the tracks. And then we put it out on Spotify. Mm-hmm. And this is that seems like, I mean, to some people, they'll be like, okay, that's how you make music and that's how you release it. Duh, you record it and you put it out and then it's out. But there's a key thing in there that has been this theme of my life lately, especially during COVID, which is, can we swear on this, by the way? Is this?
I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure, because it was just the fuck it mentality. Mm-hmm. And I think COVID enabled the fact that COVID was happening, that the world seemed to be crumbling around me and you and all of us. And it sort of empowered me to come to a feeling of like, it doesn't actually matter. Nothing is as precious as I really thought it was. These tracks, I have so many tracks. They're not precious. They're beautiful in their rawness. And people might like that. And I think I have an idea of how it could be better. But if I do that, if I execute that, that's going to take a lot of time. And like we're seeing with the Chicago experiment, that just goes on forever and takes a long time to do.
Well, let me ask a quick question on that. I mean, when is a track ever done? I mean, don't you have to do that at some point anyway?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. Yes, you have to do it at some point, but so I went through an experience where I released Spirit Fingers, and a lot of things in my life were leading up to that first Spirit Fingers record that I did on Shanachie Records. And we released it in 2018. And I was touring with Halsey for like 3 or 4 years before that, on the road, writing these compositions. I was rehearsing the group during this time, and it was culminating to this big, precious moment. Like, this was my album that is the thing that I feel like I want to express to the world. And I was so anal about every aspect of that, except for the parts I really didn't care about, like the naming of the tracks, because I think naming is bullshit. But the like music itself, which is so dear to my heart, it's such a part of me. I listened to every track probably 100 times. I fought with the band members on what I would allow them to overdub, because I wanted it to all be in the moment. And I didn't think that overdub had this spiritual quality that you get from actual live interaction, which I still think that's the case. I just don't think most people notice it. So it culminated to this big peak of releasing this record. And Shanachie had all these high hopes of like, this is going to be the like big fusion hit. We're going to break. It's so amazing. And the record's fucking amazing. The record is like, and we put it out, and Shanachie tried to market it in a way that essentially just didn't work. Like the marketing campaign didn't really work. And for reasons I can specific, now that I've been in some marketing stuff, I can say exactly the things that were done wrong. And that's some of the stuff that I've learned from. And now I'm focusing on how I market my stuff now that I'm in control of. But they ran a marketing campaign, didn't really work. But I mean, it's not their fault essentially that it didn't work, because it's normally it's a lot easier to market smooth jazz than it is to market jazz fusion. Still, even though smooth jazz is dead. Fusion is still like, way, way underground further than.
Yeah, I don't think we were allowed to say the F word, but yeah. Fusion. Yeah. That one, you didn't ask about that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But like this album and the people who actually listened to it, like the people who have some essence of understanding of jazz and of fusion and the history of fusion, like flipped out over it, but it's a relatively small audience. So that being said, there was a big letdown in how that caught on. And I had poured my heart and soul and being into this and made this my like reason to exist for a period of time. And then it was like, oh, wait a minute, nobody cares. And so realizing that, and then I looked at the other music that was being released around me that was getting traction, which was like much more careless, much less thought out, a lot of it. That was a lot more popular. And I was like, you know what? Two things. One, music is obviously subjective. So it was humbling to me in that my tastes of specifically what I think is the pinnacle, that's not what somebody else thinks is the pinnacle. And that's okay. But the other thing is people are generally much less thoughtful than I would have hoped in most aspects of life, right? In most aspects of existence. But I don't want to say especially, because it has to do with politics, it has to do with environment, it has to do with everything, but like that equally applies to music. People are not thoughtful. And so to put out that thing that I pour my heart and soul and my brain into to make it absolutely perfect in my mind, and have that be like a 9 out of 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus something else that I would put out where in my mind I would do X, Y, and Z to it. I would spend a week just working on this one track to make it an 8 or a 9, but it's a 3 right now in my mind. The vast majority of people, one, don't care because their tastes are different than mine, and two, can't even hear it. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to put out this music and I'm not going to perfect it. I'm going to let it live in the world and I'll let the people decide what they think is best. And lo and behold, one of the first track actually that I released out of that has become my most played track on Spotify, by a long shot. It's like several 100,000 views or listens now. Whereas the Spirit Fingers stuff that I released in 2018, it's interesting, is on an upwards trajectory still from that point, because people are finding out about it and sharing it, and the people who know want to share. And that will keep growing in my mind. But the things that people react to and that they find in the short term, which is everybody's thinking and living short term right now, that I don't know, and I can't predict what it is that they'll like in that way. So I might as well just put it out into the world. And that's how the session, to take it back to your actual question, the session of this, which we named later to be Anthropoda, because we needed a name for the group when it started being picked up for NPR and these different outlets. We didn't have any name for it. We didn't have any notion of what it was going to be. We just did some music and got those improvised tracks. And I was like, let's slap a cover on it and decide when we want to release it, and carelessly name the tracks and just put them out. And so Wanting is one of them.
Fantastic. So that's out today. I want to dig further into that. I want to be conscious of time here. I do want to say that I neglected to welcome Mr. Fabian Brown to the show. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Fabian Brown. There's a saying over here: nobody doesn't like Fabian, and it's true. You're gonna love him too. Fabian, how are you?
Lewis, thanks for that warm introduction. I'm gonna play in the background today because that was quite a story that you wove there, Greg. The journey, the musician's journey, a very an often traveled journey, but you came at the end of it with a lot of epiphanies there, and I'm looking forward to digging a little bit more into that story too. Thanks, Lewis, for letting me be on the show.
So I don't know if I call it epiphanies, but I mean, if I had to codify it, I would say it's less faith in people as a generality is what I came out of it with. Like less banking on people's tastes and less faith in people's ability to make decisions. But with that, an understanding of how to connect with people and how to meet people where they're at and give it, and an understanding that I just don't know what will connect.
I love think that. I'd like to wrap that with, I think it's very important for us all to envision that we are standing in a house of mirrors and we're not sure what we're looking at because of the way the mirrors are positioned at us. And those mirrors positioned at us are the things that we believe about how music is supposed to go out. Because I know I'm listening to Greg now saying 3 out of 10, but the recording quality and the musicianship of the 3 is amazing, right? So this is not like a guy in his bedroom like, yo, I did some beats, you know? It's truly incredible. The camera work, the videos, you know, so I think there's a certain level from which, from your experience and perspective, that you're looking at humanity, for example, and you don't know what they want. But I think just people are just looking at the same thing from a different, distorted sort of mirror, house of glass perspective. And you know what's great about bringing the art out and having these conversations is maybe we can find some. We can all realize it's the same thing. So I want to play a track, but you know I've got a bunch of things queued up and I can go to any one. Should we play the track we just discussed, or?
I mean, that's a cool one. It's getting featured right now on the NPR Live Sessions website, and
great. Let's
WRTI and all that. So like,
let's let them hear it. We've been talking about it. Let's go.
Cool.
Let me get my perspective here. All right, we are back here with Mr. Greg Spero. Fabian, run it down for the people.
Nice. Well, we just finished hearing Wanting from Greg Spero, available out today, as a matter of fact. Go ahead and visit tiny-records.bandcamp.com, and you can grab that. You can download it. You can do all the crazy things that crazy kids are doing today. Yeah, Greg, I'm excited for you, man. Really excited.
Who's on the track?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah. Or Fabian. Somebody besides me.
I'm pretty sure that
I don't know.
That one's with Sput and that one's with Sput and Mono and Rustlin. It's the four of us.
Great. So my question, it's been a year, I think 59 singles, I think you've put out.
59 singles.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's more. Some of the stuff seems to be in the same place, some does not. And, you know, tell us about your studio setup, because I think that's where a lot of the magic happens, right? You have a studio setup with multiple cameras. There's some great video. People just come by and play? Like, is that it?
Yeah. So what happened was I toured with a pop group for 4 years and got really stir crazy about actually being creative. So when I got back, I was like, okay, I need to just bring in all of my friends and like my old friends in the jazz world and my new friends in the pop world and just make a bunch of music, because that's my heart and soul. That's what I love. And I needed a place to do it. So I built Tiny Room Studios, and we did that. And then at that point, it's like, we have this content. What are we going to do with it? And we didn't make it even really, well, no, I don't want to say that. We did make it with some intention of releasing it, but we put so much more emphasis on the making of it that I just forgot to release most of it. And because by the time it was ready to actually try to put out and manufacture, I was still running the ship and I wanted to do another session. So I went and did another session, and then it just kept cascading till COVID hit, essentially. That's why we had all this backlogged material that we could release, because this material was made over the course of like 2 years of recording.
Where are you now? Are you able to record again?
Yeah. So now what happened during COVID was the world stopped, my studio stopped, and I was supporting the studio by having studio clients. We would have people come in and record and pay the studio so we could keep it open. That stopped. So we had to close the studio. But then I got this really cool opportunity to partner with somebody. Paul Freudenberg is his name, who's now a good friend of mine, also an investor in WeBid, my software application I've been developing for artists. But I partnered with him to build Tiny Room into a much more robust space, because it was working before. It was cool. But there were a lot of things to be desired. It was a tiny room, hence the name. And it had a tiny but robust setup. And the idea was we could probably do it a lot better if we had a big room and a bigger, more robust setup. So we rented this warehouse in Van Nuys and built it from the ground up. And now it's this big, it's like 4 times as big as the old space.
Wonderful.
We have an 8-camera setup.
Wow.
More 32 channels of mixing. Still all my microphones. The mics are amazing. I was collecting these mics throughout the process of running the studio. And now that it's super high end, 2 things are happening. One, we're bringing in bigger clients. We've got some pop clients coming in and using the studio. But additionally, I'm able to do cooler and more robust recordings with my musician friends here in LA. And I'm actually talking to some people about doing a really awesome star-studded session pretty soon, but I can't talk about who's on it because it's not confirmed yet. I wish I could. But like, we're able to do bigger, more robust things because the production value is much higher. And also everything is faster. So, for example, I did a session with Miguel Atwood-Ferguson the other day. We recorded it and live streamed it, but now we have this beautiful video of a half-hour performance that we did together that is basically already ready. In the old setup, it required a ton of post-production. In the way that the new setup is, we can like do a session and it's there and we can chop it up and put it out. So we just did a session with Joe Marcinek where we recorded like an hour-long concert at the end of his session, and now that's all content that we can just put out. It's ready to go.
Amazing.
So I'll be able to. The funny thing is the creative process is actually spontaneous and fast. Yeah. It's all of the pre-planning and all the post-production that takes up so much time and makes it so everything is so slow. That's why I couldn't release this music until COVID hit, because I had to sit down and take the time to figure out what to release, chop it up, mix it the right way, and then put it out, which I did, which is why we had such a plethora of content, because it was already recorded. But now we can do that much faster. It's much more streamlined, and I can bring in artists and pump out an album in a day or two, or a video or recording in a day or two, and have that ready to put out to the world. So I'm really excited about the experiences and the amount of content that we'll be able to put out now that things are opening up, and now that we have the better, more improved Tiny Room studio, which we're joking is now called like medium size room or medium.
Are we going to change the name of the record label or whatever to medium records?
I just think it would be really funny if Tiny Records actually got big. I don't think it will, but it might. And if it did, that would just be great. It's like, Elon Musk has the Boring Company.
Right.
And that's just hilarious. I would love some sort of play on words in a company title. Like if it were actually became, got bought by Universal or something, and it was still Tiny Records, but it was putting out pop artists.
Universal's Tiny Records, the division of Universal.
Yeah, exactly.
It kind of makes sense though, because compared to the universe, we are tiny. I think it's really cool. One of the things that we've learned in this process of like using live video switchers and doing live streaming and shows is that everything has to be mixed down. Like it has to all fit the stream, right? So you're basically pre-editing everything, and when you're done, you're recording this thing in 4K with live switches. You have a full edited show every time you perform. And you know, it's one of those magical things that you wonder why we weren't just doing that every time before, you know? I mean, I remember doing the show Ropeadope TV when we started, just with me and Fabian, and then we're like, you know, well, let's get a third camera. And I'm like, if you get a third camera and the show's an hour long, now that's another hour of footage that somebody has to go through in the editing room to try to put it all together. And I'm a fan of merging this recorded and live piece. I think there's a lot of creativity that's going to come up. It certainly has forced me very uncomfortably, and hopefully I'm getting better, to present something that, you know, it's kind of like, I would liken it to like television in the 50s, 1950s, 1960s, or Saturday Night Live. We're like, this is it. Like, we're going, and you got to bring it, and you can rehearse, but when it's done, it's going to live forever. And that's a little different than the way the business has been. I mean, there's always a place for the perfectly recorded record and edit, and there's probably a place for a well-shot, you know, concert with great edits from a real filmmaker, I might add, not from an amateur videographer.
Well, that's why I love what Greg is doing. You know, Greg, it seems like you're really not afraid to take imperfect action and just go for it. You know, get the people in the room, hit record and capture what needs to be recorded, and go ahead and push it out. But not just push it out like thoughtlessly. Push it out, get it out there to the audience, get the feedback from the market, as you say, and then have time to think and be more creative on what you want to do with the project at a bigger level. You know, and I'm really excited to hear the move from tiny records to medium records. I think that's pretty amazing.
Well, we function with a core tenet that I try to instill in people who ask for my advice on all of this stuff. There are a lot of artists, like younger and up and coming artists, who come to me and they're like, how do I, like, what should I do? I'm an artist and I know I have talent. I don't really have anything out and I don't know where to start. And the thing that I tell them is, don't be afraid to suck.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause your suck is like, my 3 is somebody else's 8.
Yep.
Sometimes, you know? And I used to be so self-conscious and insecure, thinking that, you know, like, Corey Henry is going to listen to my music and think it's not as good as it could be. And so I'm making it for Corey Henry, but I'm not making it for Corey Henry.
But that's every piece of recorded music for Corey Henry.
Wait, say that again. I missed that.
From Corey Henry's perspective, every piece of recorded music is lacking. Just
yeah. Well, from my perspective too. No, for real. That's it. And my judgment was holding me back because I would judge my music so harshly. I would also judge other people's music so harshly. And I try to quell that part of myself as a generality. But the reality is there are millions and millions of people out there that like millions and millions of different things.
Yeah.
And I only know a small sliver. And you, the artist, like the up and coming artist with your guitar and your songs, you only know like just a little bit of the overarching perspective. And if you listen to the history of music, like you listen to the stems of Marvin Gaye. That's one of my favorite things. The stems of Marvin Gaye were released or leaked or whatever. You can listen to them and the stems sound like shit. When it comes together, it's the most amazing, soulful like thing. But that's partially because we have heard that over and over, and we've accepted the flaws. And we look past the flaws and we hear the beauty and we hear the humanity and the depth and the soul behind it. And like when I'm playing music, I'm listening for my flaws. That's how I've gotten better at music. And that's how most people get better at music. If you're a great musician, even Keith Jarrett is insecure about his piano playing. Because we all listen for our flaws. And so by don't be afraid to suck, the odds are you're not going to suck on a general scale. That's a really, really, really low bar. Like you have Cardi B out there, you know, like you're
here we go.
Pardon me. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm really sorry.
It's okay.
I'm gonna get canceled.
I say this many times, probably on this show and others, but one of my favorite stories was when Elvis Presley went in and cut his first single with at Sun Studios. Sam Phillips, I think it is, said, okay, that's a wrap, and he's like, no, I need to do that again because there's a mistake in there. And he's like, I'm not cutting it again. It's like mistakes are what makes it human. Mm-hmm. So you don't want you absolutely don't want to lose that, and that's key. Speaking of studios and everything, I want to say today that rest in peace to Roger Hawkins. And if you're not familiar with the man, Muscle Shoals documentary can tell you and talk about a person in the moment cutting great songs. I just want to read real quick, not to digress too much, but when he passed yesterday, I was explaining to someone who wasn't familiar with him, of like, oh, it's that guy, But here's a few of the tracks that he cut at Muscle Shoals on drums. Wilson Pickett, Land of a Thousand Dances. Percy Sledge, When a Man Loves a Woman. Mustang Sally. I had to mention that in the show, right? Respect, Chain of Fools. All the way up to I'll Take You There with the Staple Singers. And Bob Seger, Old Time Rock and Roll. So he wasn't afraid to suck, and most of the time he didn't. That's the key, right? So,
yeah. But you also look at people who are look at Frank Sinatra's catalog. Listen to some the Frank. If you really dig deep, a lot of that you're not gonna like. And obviously one of the greatest musical figures in all of recorded music history. And some of the best music, in my opinion. But you dig in there, and there's some stuff that if I were him at the time, I would have been like, oh no, I'll never put that out. But if he didn't put that out, we wouldn't have learned from it,
right?
And wouldn't have moved forward and then built this career with things in the marketplace. You have to have stuff out there, and you never know, especially in today's climate. You never know who's going to love it.
That's it. Get it out. There's a band on Tiny Records called the Heartstrings Project, and I was stunned to find that one Peter Spero was a member of the band. I didn't know until I met your dad on one of these calls. But I want to play that track, one of the tracks. I think it's the title track from their album. So let's jump over to that.
Wanna call out, don't wanna leave a tear. Find my love, find when you're here. I'm searching for truth now, but this web's got me in chains. I'm fine, my love, I'm fine, yes I'm chained. I'm holding out, holding out, holding out, holding out. Corrupt from the system, it's stealing my air. Maybe this breath that I give you, I share. Maybe leave some for me now, just to keep me alive. Maybe each morning my eyes see that sky. My eyes see a sky. Holding out, holding out, holding out as the world keeps a shifting. Guess I'm holding out, holding out, holding out in the shadows of me. Guess I'm holding out, holding out, holding out as the world keeps changing. And you're miles away, and I'm miles from me. I don't wanna scare you, I'm just trying to live on. these habits of mine, they'll be gone, they'll be gone. And I know you can handle this change that's in me. I'm holding out, holding out, holding out as the world keeps a-shifting. Yes, I'm holding out, holding out, holding out in the shadows of me. Yes, I'm holding out, holding out, holding out as the world keeps changing. And you're miles away, and I'm miles from me. I'm searching for truth now. Some might say it's home. Maybe someday I won't feel alone. I won't feel alone.
All right, and we're back. That was the Heartstrings Project. Mr. Brown.
We just listened to Shadow People, again by the Heartstrings Project. One of the many, how would I say it? Very talented bands and acts on the roster of Tiny Records. It's a family band. Greg, tell us a little bit about Luke and Marina and Ellis and your father.
Yeah. So I feel like we sort of found this undiscovered diamond in the Heartstrings Project. I love their music so much. And I happened to meet them because Luke's father is my dentist. And I don't know if you knew that part of it, but and so they're family friends, and my dad started playing with Luke when Luke was getting more into music. And I still go back to Chicago to get my dentistry done by Luke's dad because he's so good. So his dad and my dad were friends. What's that?
This show is not sponsored by the dentist.
Not sponsored by Wagadani Dental Care Incorporated.
Okay.
Maybe we should. But so Luke met my dad through that connection. And I was building this Tiny Records, and at some point, it was actually my dad who came to me, and he was like, "I've been playing with this guy, Luke, who's Dr. Wagadni's son, and he's pretty good. You should take a listen to it." And I listened. I was like, "Oh my God, he's amazing." Mm-hmm. And his songs are soulful and beautiful. And then at some point, we had a little bit of bandwidth in Tiny Records, surprisingly, because we were still releasing singles every week. But I was like, why? I've played on everything so far. Why don't we support somebody else using this infrastructure that we've built? Because their music needs to be heard by people. And we have this mechanism that can support them. And that's when we started opening Tiny Records up to other artists. So them, Carolyn Samuelson, and I'm looking at other artists now that we can potentially support as things grow. And it brings me joy to be able to bring attention to music that I feel like should be highlighted. Because of one of the general tenets of where our society is at right now, and not to get heady again, but I'm going to.
Please do.
Which is that creativity is undervalued relative to what its balanced value would be, and it has been for 20 years more, as far as I can tell. Mm-hmm. Like artists are just not making as much money as they could when people were selling vinyls, and I mean, they're selling vinyls again, but in the heyday of vinyls, and when you didn't have digital music, and therefore the general value that's placed on people who are creating content has been squished, and now it's rising again because of these different mechanisms online that we have, including like TikTok being one of them. People are actually making a ton of money on TikTok, and So it's rising, but it has so much. It's got like at least 10x more to go as far as the actual value of creatives. So because of that, you have groups that are so beautiful and creative, like the Heartstrings Project, that are not going to be given a chance because the monetization capability is just not built out yet. So for me to have this infrastructure and be able to put the spotlight on them for a moment, because their music deserves the spotlight, and then be a part of their trajectory, form this relationship, and hopefully be with them for years and years to come as people begin to recognize how amazing their music is. It brings me a lot of joy to be able to do that.
And Greg, is a lot of that the drive and the passion that you have for the inception of Weebid? Because what I'm hearing is a creative artist, having a feeling for their fellow band members and musicians, and wanting to give them an opportunity, a space where they can contribute their art and put it out there to the world, but also, feel valued for doing that. How is that connected? How is Greg Spero, the musician, the creative, the artist, and Greg Spero, the businessman, the innovator, the entrepreneur, where does the bridge go from?
See, to me, it's all the same thing.
Interesting.
For me, I can envision something better than what exists now. And then I get really excited about that vision. And then I try to put the pieces in place to manifest it. And that's creating a composition, like for the Chicago experiment, which will be released one day, which we recorded with Mackay McCraven, Joel Ross, Jeff Parker, Daryl Jones of the Rolling Stones, Marquise Hill, and Irvin Pierce. For that, I took a month and I got up at 6 a.m. and composed from 6 to noon every day. And because that was the process. But before that, I had a vision for this thing that could exist. It's like this whole community of Chicago people, the connection with Ropeadope, the Philadelphia experiment, this trajectory and this end point that's like, that would be really cool if that were our reality that we lived in, that existed. So I was like, okay, how do I do that? Get up at 6 a.m. and compose, and then do the studio session and build it out and have I suck at logistics, by the way. I just do it because you have to do logistics to get these things done. And I have some capability, probably more than a lot of other artistic minds, but still not as much as like the real business minds. And so I've like squeeze out these logistics to actually make it happen. And then it happens at some point. And that's the exact same thing that happened with Weebid. I saw COVID happen, and I saw this catastrophe of all the monetization capabilities of artists in terms of concert revenues, which was our primary form of revenues for relatively successful artists on many levels. And I saw that going away. And so I put that together with my experience that I'd had over the previous 10 years, which informed me. It gave me some insight into the marketplace of creative output, seeing that there were all of these fan wants and needs that were not being addressed. Because when I was touring with Halsey, they would be trying to get her to do things all the time, and they'd be willing to pay for things all the time. And generally it was the same things, but she didn't have a way of addressing those things in a quick and efficient way that was quick and efficient enough for her to actually be compelled to do it. And there was no guarantee that they'd even pay if she did those things. Same with me with my weekly piano channel, my jazz channel. So youtube.com/weeklypiano. You see the lessons that I've been putting out over the past, I think 12 years now. God. Wow. Maybe I shouldn't have been teaching 12 years ago, but hey, that's part of the imperfect stuff. You have to start putting things out.
Right.
And so that on Weekly Piano, people would ask me for all these different lessons. I did 10-minute lessons that I'd put up online for a bunch of people to watch. And it was generally the stuff that I was practicing myself. People would ask me for this or that. And I'd be like, okay, I would do that. But I'm not going to get paid for it because YouTube doesn't pay shit for stuff like that. Because my channel's just not big enough. I have 27,000 subscribers, but that's a drop in the bucket compared to the millions and millions that the real monetizers have on there from ad revenues. So I knew I wasn't going to get paid for it. And so I started experimenting, being like, okay, PayPal me $50 and I'll answer your question. And some people would do that. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is the same thing that later when I was touring with Halsey, I recognized, which is that there are these same needs in the fan base. Like fan A, B, C, and D all want me to make a video on Oscar Peterson technique. And they they're all asking me to do it. One of them's willing to pay me $50 for it. I figured that out early. So what about these other people? How much are they willing to pay for it? And there's no way for me to know. And so it's like we're walking on this land, but it's an oil field, but there's no drills and there's no way to, I mean, pardon the environmentally unfriendly analogy, but like there's just there's this plethora of fan wants that are all the same, that are waiting to be tapped into. If there's some handshake mechanism between the artist and the fan to see the fan ideas and to also see how much they'll pay to get those ideas executed. So I was like, given all of that information, what do I have to do to get there? So I see a future where artists make more money and they know their fans better. And they tap into this giant well of value that they're not tapping into. So how do I get there? Okay, I guess I have to form a software company. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll form a software company. I'll get with people I know who can be lawyers. We can do the legal thing. I have to find a graphic designer. Okay, it took me actually a while to do that. I started thinking about this before COVID. And I found my graphic designer and co-founder like 6 months before COVID hit. And then when COVID hit, I was like, I have to do this now. So I found a technical person to help us out. And I put it out to my community and said, I need some money if I'm going to make this happen. And some people gave me some money to make it happen. And so we hired more developers, and that's what I've been doing every day now since the start of the pandemic is working to make this vision a reality for artists. And it's a little different, I think, in my case than it is in the case of a TikTok or an Instagram or one of these other platforms where this Weebid could be a global platform if we manifest it right. In that I feel the pain, and I have felt the pain for my entire career of what an artist goes through to try to live off of their art. It sucks. It's great to be an artist. It's the most amazing feeling in the world to manifest your creations into this universe, and then have people appreciate your creations and see and to be able to. It's both like the best and the worst thing in the world to stand on a stage with your soul completely born naked and have people there to either judge you or embrace you, depending on the how you feel about yourself and depending on the scenarios you put yourself in. And it's always some combination of the two. But those are these experiences that I wouldn't give up for anything, for all the money in the world. But the process of actually making a living and doing that is really hard, and it doesn't have to be that hard. Especially now that technology is more accessible, it's more buildable, and the global market is opened up for technology builders. So you can work remotely now. So it's really feasible to make a platform like this for artists that will help artists get to know their fans better and make better money in a landscape that's very challenging.
I want to say that it's going to be different, what you're building at Weebid than a TikTok, in the sense that the unfortunate thing about a lot of these this new technology or these platforms that have come out is they really haven't addressed the issue of high income level at the top down to zero. So it's not the money that's being made, it's the distribution of that money. And I think Weebid has the opportunity to be a more equitable playing field. So people, you're not going to go to Weebid and make nothing or everything. You're going to go to Weebid and make some money, and it's going to be directly related to how well you communicate with your fans and the quality of what you put out there to those fans, and not this chart situation where number one gets all of it, and and the rest don't. I also, it occurs to me as you're speaking, Greg, I've spent a lot of time trying to teach artists how to do business, but I think what you're kind of saying and what I'm seeing what you're doing is creatives don't have a business problem. Business has a creativity problem. And we need that level of creativity in the business system. That's what's wrong. Is business is uncreative, and that's why we keep ending up at the same place where a few people make a lot, and the quality level starts here and eventually ends up at Big Macs at the McDonald's drive-through at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's where everything ends up. It ends up, even all the brands, from the car companies to IKEA to McDonald's to the music business, ends up with Big Macs. They just end up with the cheapest common denominator as they grow, and that's a problem. So creativity needs to be infused into the business. I think that's what you're doing.
One thing I've noticed in the process of being in the startup world is that the general idea in the startup world is to look around and see what people are already doing and try to make a mechanism that makes that easier,
cheaper.
And there's a need for that no matter what you're doing, you're going to do that to some extent. You're not going to have a quantum shift between people's behaviors, but there's a spectrum between like trying to solve this problem for people that they're having right now, which there are thousands of startups doing, raising decent money, trying to solve whatever little micro problems exist, and showing people that there's a better way to do this thing that you're trying to, this higher level goal that you're trying to do. All artists are trying to make money. It's a universal problem for creatives. And there are 20 different platforms that are trying to recreate Patreon right now and recreate OnlyFans for musicians and do all these things that are the same thing that people are trying to do and like tweak it in little different ways. But we have, and there are a couple of people who are beginning to try to copy us now, which is really interesting to see. But we have started, and because we're a year ahead of them, we actually have software out that's being used, and they don't even, the copiers don't have software out yet. So we just have to keep moving fast. But the vision of how fans and creatives can engage with each other in a way that is better for the fans and that they have more of a voice and more power, and better for the creatives and that they understand their consumers better and have more of a reasonable agreement with them as a collective. Like, to put that together in this way, it requires seeing something that's not just what people are trying to do. It requires seeing something that people would be better off if they knew how to do and that they knew was possible. And that's what we're trying to do. That's why I don't think anybody has built this platform before us.
Right. Build the world as you want it to be. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Let's hear some music, and we'll come back for a little bit. That got pretty heavy, Greg. Just going to say. Yeah.
It's my always downfall.
It's all good.
That's beautiful.
I always find the most creative ways to destroy myself. Yeah, I can tear me down better than anybody else. I don't need help. I don't need help. You've been pouring gasoline in your living room. Light a cigarette while you complain about the fumes. Who are you, dog? Who are you? mountain blue and act like I'm the rest. I don't need your help. I don't need your help. I don't need your help. You're so shook when I look right past you. So surprised you don't get an answer. Guess no one told you, now I told you. We're not living in board. Ain't it weird to feel small stuff? Oh, come on, just say something. No, go ahead, tell me what you want me. I'm not the kind of girl you want to. I'm not the kind of girl you want to. Oh, come on, oh, come on. I've been undying long before you. I've been undying long before you. You've been holding all I have over open flames, stepping in the haze while you're calling out my name. I won't follow you. Oh, come on, make this easy. No, go ahead, tell me what do I need. I'm not the kind of girl you want to. I'm not the kind of girl you want to. Oh, come on, just say something. No, go ahead, tell me what do I need. I'm not the kind of girl you want to. I'm not the kind of girl you want to. Oh, I've been undying long before you. I've been undying long before you. I've been undying long before you. I've been undying long before you.
All right. We are back. If you're just joining us, this is Ropeadope TV, the extended version. We are talking with Mr. Greg Spero, founder of Tiny Records, Weebid, the Tiny Room Sessions, and many more things. And we're talking about an attitude called fuck it and getting new things done and how to be creative and create change in a world that so desperately needs it. We just heard from Transviolet, Sarah McTaggart, a vocalist, recorded at Tiny Room Studios, and that gives you an idea of some of the diversity that you can find on Tiny Records, which I want to say clearly that while Greg is here saying, I'm trying new things and, you know, F it, if you look back, and record labels have an interesting way of doing this, you look back at the things that you released and you start to discover a body of work that speaks to your creative effort and the connections, the human connections that you've made. And I personally believe that music that's coming out of the independent sector in the music business from the years 2000 and especially 2010 to 2020 and beyond, will be looked back upon as one of the most creative, innovative, and aesthetically beautiful times in the entire music industry. I don't think we can see it yet, but when I talk to people like Greg Spero or Splut Seawright or Christian Scott Tunde Ajwa or Terrace Martin or many of the great people who have graced our halls, I feel like I'm speaking to Claude Monet or Auguste Renoir in the 1880s, where they're struggling to pay the rent, and the entire art establishment is telling them that their way is just too weird and different. And then there's a few people that come along and collect it and recognize the value, but you don't find out for another 40 years or 50 years what you really have. And this is that time, coupled with the fact that we are going through global challenges, and some of the greatest art is created as a response to or as a companion to the challenges that we're facing. And this is what I think is happening here. And I think it's happening in business as well. And it's great to speak with Greg Spero at Tiny Records, because he bridges those worlds. And I think that's how we can communicate so well. So
that's very kind of you to say, and very encouraging to hear you make that analogy. Also dismal in a way, because, in 50 years, I'm going to be 80, 86. I'll still be alive, hopefully. I don't know. Life extension technologies are very strong right now. And
we may live forever.
Yeah,
we might just live forever. I'm certainly planning on it. Against my better judgment. Against my better judgment. Long live impermanence. So I hope that I don't live forever, but I think it might happen. But that's I think the difference now, Greg, is exactly in what you're doing. And what I try to do over here is that business is moving at a faster pace, and changes are happening in business at a faster pace. So we just might be able to reach people and walk them along the path, so that you can discover a Monet in his own time, rather than paying the art dealers endlessly.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
I mean, certain things don't give me hope or take away hope. Things like Bob Dylan selling his catalog for $300 million, which is the most undervalued deal in the history of everything. So there are still the people out there who are controlling, but there's a lot of disruption happening, and hopefully what we're doing, what Tiny Records is doing, is part of this.
Amen, brother.
I'm speaking to the choir. Yeah. Somebody out there, if you've heard this and you disagree, please just tear us apart. Tell me why I'm wrong. I want to hear it.
I'll take it. Then we'll bring you on the show and we'll have a great argument together. And that's the episode that'll be the most popular, because that's what people love. But yeah. Louis, I got to say, what you're doing is facilitating all of this, all these things that you're talking about. And I'm really grateful for it. I wouldn't have been able to do Tiny Records if we weren't able to imprint onto Ropeadope and collaborate with you and utilize the resources that you've built over the past. How many years old is Ropeadope now? Like 20 something?
21. Yeah.
21. Yeah, 21 years.
We can legally drink now in most U.S. territories.
Yay!
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Responsibly. Right. Yeah, so, 21 years. It's pretty crazy. And it's funny because I always thought of Ropeadope as like a 20th century label because it was started. But now you look, it was started a month and a half before the end of the last century. So we really are kind of a 21st century reflection of what's happening out there.
Well, and you're looking forward. I mean, all of our conversations, we've been having conversations about blockchain technology and how that's going to change the existence of the music industry and creative infrastructure for years. I don't know how many years now. And you guys are always looking forward, and I appreciate that about Ropeadope.
We're not getting far enough, but we will, with the support of fans, and it's all about connection. So Well, I want to tell people to go to tiny-records.bandcamp.com. Yes, you can stream all this music for the price of a million songs, which is apparently $10 a month. But the best thing to do if you really want to see, I mean, it's kind of like walking into the record store and seeing what one person has curated all in one place. When you're at Spotify, everything's coming at you a mile a minute. It's like walking into the mall. You want to walk into that shop downtown, go to tiny-records.bandcamp.com and see 60 songs and some full-length records that Greg Spero has put out over the last not even a year. So, and support there. High quality downloads, hang on to them, buy them, support the artist, pay a little extra. And it means a lot. And you can also communicate through the app. I'm sure Greg's going to answer if you send some questions through there.
Oh yeah, Weebid. Yeah,
You can do that too.
my.weebid.app is the address for that.
I was referring to the Bandcamp app, but we can use Weebid as well.
Oh, the app. I'm sorry. Whenever anybody, this is like so ingrained into my brain right now because that's all I do all day now is work on this app. Whenever anybody says the app, I assume they're talking about Weebid. But yes, there's a Bandcamp app as well, which is great. And Ethan Diamond is doing a great job at making that amazing. So, yeah, support Bandcamp.
All right. Well, we're gonna take it out. Am I missing anything, Fabian?
No, just stay tuned, guys. Thanks for all the fans for watching and supporting and dropping those questions in and comments in the chat. Stay tuned. We'll be coming back in the month of June with some more Ropeadope TV, highlighting different artists and different people in the music industry. So just stay tuned and watch out for that.
I could share a couple of things there as we go out. One of the episodes in June, hopefully, maybe July, but I hope in June, we're going to have a discussion about music, jazz specifically, and hockey. We're going to talk about the intersection of the sport and the art form, or two art forms, if you will. I'm sure that'll come up. Another thing we're going to have is a conversation with Joe Alterman from Atlanta, and I hear a rumor that the great Ramsey Lewis is going to join us for that. That's going to be coming up, and more to be announced. Thanks for tuning in, and let's pick something. Greg, you want to pick something to go out?
Oh man,
you're not looking at the list.
I'm not looking at the list.
I'll give you options.
Okay.
Terrion, Chris Myers, Lido. How about you and Mike Mitchell?
Woo! Okay, which one? What track?
I'm gonna need to check my cue sheet here.
White women and morphine.
I was hoping you'd say that. I love when people announce that title. Yeah, let's play some White Women and Morphine. Mike titled that, by the way.
I love it. Me. And I cannot. You guys have both said it, and now I have to say thank you for tuning in. Join us next week. We're going to go out with White Women and Morphine.
Like so many great people in the past.
There you go.